It's a ham radio.
The Cadillac of ham radios.
Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. We've got a great episode for you today as usual, but first, we have a little housekeeping to take care of, and I'm going to turn it over to Jasmin to let you know where you can find us on social media and where you can listen to the podcast.
Thanks, Ashley. You can find us on Instagram at Ham Radio Media, all one word, on Twitter at HamThrow, on YouTube at Ham Radio Media, or using our handle HamRadio1983. We also have a Discord you can join, which is linked in the description of this episode. If you have a fan theory or question you want to share, you can email us at hamradiomedia@gmail.com. Ashley also has a fanfic on AO3 entitled Stranger Things College, which is also linked in the description. The podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and much more. If you like the show, please consider leaving us a rating or review. We have a lot of totally tubular stuff coming up, so be sure to follow us on social media to keep up with the podcast and all of our new content.
And welcome back to another episode of the Ham Radio podcast. Today is a very special episode because Jasmin is back from her brief hiatus. Yay! Jasmin, welcome back. We missed you.
Thanks, Ashley. Good to be back.
Yes, and Jasmin actually went on a trip to the Upside Down. That's where she has been, and we're glad to see that she survived. And sounds like you had a great trip.
Yeah, can't complain.
I hear they have a resort down there now, so hopefully I'll get tickets myself.
Not bad.
So anyway, on today's episode, we will be continuing with our script breakdown series, where we've been analyzing the script for the Stranger Things 4 episode, Chapter 7, The Massacre at Hawkins Lab. So if you haven't listened to parts 1 through 13 yet, we highly encourage you to do that before you listen to this episode, because we will be discussing the appendices in the script and the anatomy of a script in general. And we will also be sharing our predictions for what we might get on TUDUM this upcoming Saturday.
Alrighty, so I feel like to start off, we should talk about TUDUM. That's what's on everybody's mind. I'm hopeful, Ashley. Honestly, I'm more hopeful than I've been in a while in terms of content. I think mainly because they're officially advertising that a bunch of the cast is going to be there. And for any of the Wednesday fans out there, if you've been following any of their social media, their plan after they, the teaser came out and they announced the release dates for that, they've been pretty regularly posting both old and new content to their socials in the lead up to TUDUM. And I've also noticed that other shows that are going to be coming out later this year and in the next year as well have been posting more content. So, typically from a marketing communications perspective, you do that when you lead up to something. For them to do that much work and then not do something big would be a really weird strategy. Like, it's not typically how it's done. So to be honest, I really am hopeful because they've got the members of the cast there and it feels like we're leading up to something. On top of that, this is the first time the event will be broadcast live on Netflix. In the past, it's been broadcast on YouTube and TikTok. This is the first time it's going live on the platform. And I think that's because, eagle-eyed fans will have noticed that Netflix has been doing more live events in the past few months, which seems to indicate they've either gotten some kind of deal or contract with a provider that's able to do live entertainment, and or they've upgraded their technology to be able to do this. So it's really cool that it's going to be on Netflix itself. And it appears they are pulling out all the stops. It's been confirmed that Lady Gaga will perform, and it's their first musical performance. She has a guest role on Wednesday, season 2. That's been reported, so that's part of it. So they appear to be pulling out all the stops for this. And I think a big part of that is the fact that they didn't do TUDUM last year, and there was no kind of press or media around why they weren't doing it. It just time came and went and they didn't do it. So it appears that they're pulling out all the stops for this one, and I, for one, am very excited.
Yeah, so am I. I feel like this TUDUM, I think, is one I've been the most excited for in quite some time. I think it's because like it's not just about Stranger Things, although that's really what I'm going for. But I mean, we have Wednesday, and Squid Game stuff, and they have, I feel like, just more interesting content these days, and also with the Lady Gaga performance, I'm really looking forward to that. And so it just seems like this year they have just more available, and I think it's equal parts them not doing it last year and it being on the Netflix platform, maybe copyright reasons or what have you. They're able to do a lot more on the Netflix platform than just YouTube. But yeah, I'm very excited about it. I think I actually might watch the entire event from beginning to end. And in the past, I've only really stuck around for like the Stranger Things stuff. But I think this year, I think it's gonna change for me this year, because again, it seems like there's just more to it this year, and just more to get excited about. And this will be my first live event, like watching it on Netflix, the platform. So that's going to be very interesting, for sure. So Jasmin, like, do you want to talk about like some of the hopes that you have for TUDUM, and maybe like some fears that you have for it, as it really relates to Stranger Things?
Yeah, for sure. In terms of hopes, as has been rumored, I think we are going to either get a teaser trailer or a full trailer. I'd love a full trailer. I know for Wednesday there's some behind the scenes stuff, and then they did the teaser. So it looks like, we'll get the full trailer presumably for that. I think it depends on if the behind the scenes teaser we got is what is their official teaser, and then we are going to get a full trailer at TUDUM, or if there's going to be another teaser, like that's not the official teaser, and we're going to get another teaser and then a full trailer at some point over the summer. But I feel like the trailer is likely based on what they've been leading up to, the rumors, also what they've done for Wednesday. The shows have a lot in common, so it makes sense they'd follow a similar kind of promotional strategy. And if you look at what they've done for the other big shows like Squid Game and Bridgerton, that kind of thing. So I'm really hopeful for that. I think we definitely will get release dates, because it'd be super weird if we didn't. We know Wednesday is coming out in this like August, September. Bridgerton's next year. So I feel like the only slot really available is the fall, and it'd be weird if we didn't. So those are some of my hopes. I feel like there's the cast. I'm hoping for maybe another doing trivia with the cast like they did during COVID, or something else like that. And we know that according to the poster, Caleb, Finn, Gaten, Millie, and Noah are all confirmed. And according to his Instagram story, Noah landed in LA yesterday. I gotta be honest, when I first saw that, I was like, cool, he's on a tarmac next to a plane. I was like, and? But then someone on Instagram pointed out that he'd landed there because, for TUDUM. And I was like, oh, that makes more sense. That's more exciting. And something else I noticed is David Harbour is listed as attending on his IMDb. So fingers crossed that he and other cast members show up. That wouldn't surprise me. Like, they don't want to let the cat out of the bag for everything. So I could see them bringing out the initial people they've advertised, and then the rest of the cast kind of showing up kind of partway through or something, or been like, like, oh, we've got a surprise for you guys, and then other people come out. I could see something like that. So those are some of my hopes. I think probably fears is that it's a letdown. I've watched previous years, and the last time I watched, it was like a total letdown. I think it was just like the Linda Hamilton announcement that was introduced by like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's not even like part of the show, and like that was it. So there've been a lot of letdowns in the past. So I feel like the fears are, it's a letdown, like the cast is there, but they don't announce anything big. I feel like maybe just release dates or something small, or like a poster or something. Like a poster would be cool, but yeah, that they don't give us something concrete. But I feel like we will, because I feel like every other big show they had, if you've looked at their marketing, you've looked at their social media, they've been dropping stuff continuously or on a regular basis, and Stranger Things is the only show in which they have not done that. So it'd be really weird, especially to have gotten all the actors, like we've got the main party there, to them to come down for this when they're busy with other projects, to just have them be like, it's coming soon, or like, here's a poster, or like, here's some release dates, peace. It'd be kind of a waste of their time, you know? Like, I know they're under contract, but still, it's kind of a waste. So I feel like we're going to get good stuff. I'm hopeful this year for like the first time in a while. What about you, Ashley? What are your hopes and fears?
Yeah, I feel like we're on the same plane there with both our hopes and fears. I mean, obviously, I'm just hopeful for any actual Stranger Things 5 content at this point. I mean, it's been a very understandable drought, but yet that doesn't mean it's been any less, frustrating, especially when you see other shows like you brought up Bridgerton. Like, they randomly dropped a little bit of footage from Bridgerton season 4, which is supposed to come out next year. And it's like, the Duffer Brothers back in January, it said we have 650 hours of raw footage to comb through, and yet we can't even get like 10 seconds worth. I would hope that it really is worth the wait. I mean, I feel like it will be, but you know what I'm saying. But yeah, like, really, I mean, I don't feel like I'm asking too much here, but, maybe like first official teaser trailer, not even the full trailer. It doesn't even have to be the full trailer. Like, just give me a nice 1:30 to 2-minute long teaser trailer, then the release date, and maybe an official poster or confirmation on who Linda Hamilton's going to be playing, or maybe even another behind the scenes featurette, or maybe all of the above. I don't really feel like that's at this point too big of an ask, especially, I mean, since I know TUDUM is going to be on May 31st, but that's technically June. And so, at this point, I feel like we're definitely due for all of those things. And like you said, like, being as you've managed to get, like 5 confirmed that we know of some of the biggest actors on the show to come down for this thing. I mean, I would hope it's something big, especially since there's a live audience there as well. Because, like, part of my biggest fears is, like you said, it being, a total letdown, and them doing something like have these cast members just go up there and say something like Stranger Things is coming soon, or things we've heard already, like you're not ready, or Stranger Things 5 will be the most epic season yet. Like, we've heard that like probably 10 times already now, and I'm saying, if that were to happen, Jasmin, if that were to be the only thing, consider like everything I just said about this event, I mean, if people in the audience hurled tomatoes at them, I mean, I probably wouldn't be that surprised. I mean, again, it wouldn't be on the actor's fault. It would be definitely Netflix. And at that point, I would be like, wow, they couldn't have given a bigger FU to the fans, if they did that. But, I don't really think it's going to be that. I think they're going to do more than that. But, then the other fears I have are like more First Shadows stuff, or a sneak peek or something similar for the new animated spinoff, The Tales from 85, which I am excited about that. I am, but I want Stranger Things 5 stuff. That's what I'm tuning in for. That's where we're at currently. At this point, I'm not really interested in the animated show right now. But really, I think if it's not season 5 related content, I think I would be highly disappointed, and that would be my biggest fear. But I mean, I try to be very optimistic, and so I am being optimistic. I've been excited since Sunday for this, and I'm going to be excited for it and hopeful until they prove otherwise on Saturday evening. But yeah, I feel like it'll be our first official trailer. I mean, we've heard rumors have been circulating for the past month that the teaser is ready. And I can't think of a better event that they could drop it than TUDUM, because I feel like if it's not TUDUM, I just don't, other than some random Friday or something in June or July, I don't see it happening until we get to around the time of the release date, because I feel like in late June, but especially July, they're going to start ramping up all the Wednesday stuff. So I feel like it's TUDUM. It's either TUDUM or it's not happening until the season is released. You know?
Yeah, totally. And something you just made me think of is, one of the reasons I'm hopeful is there's been lots of promotional stuff about how they're trying to find Stranger Things superfans to attend the event. And last I saw, that had sold out. I think that plus the fact that Lady Gaga is performing, the fact that they were specifically looking for Stranger Things fans for like a special like fan experience, and they were selling tickets. They've done this in the past where they had a whole bunch of footage of art and cosplay and different things that fans had done. And then they had the actors doing, trivia and different things like that. I think that's what made the last time they did TUDUM so disappointing, is because they managed to pull that off during COVID, and then we got absolutely nothing. And it was like, if you can pull this off during COVID, by that time, stuff with the pandemic was winding down. It's like, well, you should be doing more, not less. But I feel like they wouldn't go out of their way to find super fans, to do an event for them, to sell tickets, to get them to like do the fan event and also have them at TUDUM, like to do all of that work. If they're not going to do something, because then it's like, well, presumably you're getting footage. Like there's probably people who are going to fly in or travel in for this, and to do all of that and to just have it be, I don't know, some kind of like photo op with props, or like, you don't get something like real. You don't get something presented or meet anybody. Like you don't get something special out of it. I feel like people would be really angry. I feel like they'd have like a riot on their hands. And like you said, like, people are going to start legit throwing stuff if they get to that point in the show and there's nothing concrete, there's nothing significant. I feel like people are going to lose it and start throwing things. And like, one would hope that the organizers are smart enough to know that you don't want to piss people off to that extent after this long. Like in a big group, generally a bad idea security-wise, and just, yeah.
I know. That would be like accidentally popping yourself in the throat with a rubber band, which I've done before, and it's not pleasant. But yeah, especially considering that, I mean, I'm already preparing for that. I would be very surprised if they did it like at the outset at 8:00, which is when the event starts. I mean, like definitely it's gonna be at the beginning of like the 10:00 hour, maybe even down to 11, which again, it would not surprise me if they waited until 11 to do it, because 11. And so with that being said, if that is the case and they throw out this lame duck something, people have waited 3 hours and that's it. Like, come on. I mean, we've literally gotten like maybe 3 actual real like content things. Like, I mean, yeah, we had all the behind the scenes pictures during filming, but in terms of like, edited and cut content, it was the behind the scenes teaser in July of last year. And then we got on Stranger Things Day, the episode titles. And then we didn't get anything else until like February, when they dropped that missing poster of 11, which, I mean, it looked like something that you and I could have created on Canva. But I mean, since then, I mean, like almost 4 months later, it's been crickets.
Yeah, we haven't gotten as much as I think people were expecting. The last big drop was towards the end of January, where we got like the poster and the like the little coming soon for all of Netflix trailer that they did. And other shows, like you said, have gotten, a lot more. And I feel like the kind of assumption earlier on was that they were still editing and everything. But when it came out, they had that much raw footage and that much stuff they were working with. It's like, okay, well, you could have given us something. Photos, production, still something. And they haven't, so past that point. So yeah, I think it's got to be something good, and it would be a real waste. I feel like if it's going to be something lame, I don't know. I feel like they'd have 1 or 2 actors there. I feel like they would not get people to fly in. You don't need that many people to announce something like that, you know? In terms of timing, if I remember correctly, I feel like before, I think Nicola Coughlan from Bridgerton came out about halfway through the event and showed sneak peeks for Bridgerton season 3. So I would guess that they'd probably do something similar about the midway point. Like they'd start with like the new upcoming stuff. And I also noticed they're including more stuff from other languages, which is cool. I remember there's a bunch of like Spanish and other language content they started with, which I know fans who are, speak languages other than English, I'm sure do appreciate. So I feel like they'll probably start with that. And then I know about halfway through they did Bridgerton, so they might do that just because it's a little bit farther off. And then I feel like interspiced with other things, we're probably going to get Wednesday and Squid Game. And then I feel like Stranger Things stuff will come towards the end. And then I feel like maybe they'll end with the Lady Gaga performance, or they might flip it. They might do like Bridgerton or Squid Game and then Stranger Things and then Wednesday, and then they finish it off with the performance. So that's kind of what I'm picturing based on what they've done in the past.
Yeah, definitely saving the best for last.
Which is like totally cool as long as they give us something. Like if we get really good stuff, no one's going to care when it was. And also it's going to go up on YouTube afterwards. They always do that. So it'll be all over TikTok. So, and Reels and everything else. So that's fine as long as they give us something real. If they don't and people tune in for the whole thing, I remember being so angry and disappointed when a couple years ago when I watched the whole thing and I gave up a whole afternoon and it was like, that's it. That's literally it. Like, what?
Yeah, I've been there too. Like, well, that was a total waste of time.
Yeah, for sure. So fingers crossed, everybody, that we get good stuff and it's not a waste of our time. And yeah, we're gonna think good thoughts. Think good Stranger Things 5 content thoughts.
Yes, everyone start manifesting. That's what you need to do. Manifest.
Get out the candles, guys, and manifest.
Even throughout the day on Saturday, manifest.
Think good thoughts, and we're going to manifest good content into existence. Alrighty, okay, so now we've talked about our predictions. Let's get into the appendixes. So first, we're going to start off with an explanation of what an appendix is, and provide some context for that, and then we're going to get into it. So, what is an appendix? It's when in a TV show or movie script, there's a section at the end that contains supplementary information like character bios, location details, costume or prop details, music cues or sound effects, or alternate dialogue that isn't essential for the core script but can be helpful for production or future reference. So what we're going to be talking about is the first few appendixes of the Massacre at Hawkins Lab script and what we can learn from them and how the sausage gets made in terms of, putting together a movie script or a TV show script and all the stuff that has to go into that. So Ashley, do you want to talk about the anatomy of a script for everyone?
Absolutely. Jasmine, I've been waiting a long time to get into this. I mean, I went through my Screenplay for Dummies book and got all the basic information for you guys on a script. And it's important to note that what I'm going to be talking about specifically is for a screenplay script, because there are actually different types of scripts for different medias, like audio dramas, gameplay scripts. Those are vastly different from a screenplay. And so today, just be talking mostly about the anatomy of a screenplay script. So it begins with the title page. It has the title centered, all caps, and usually written by, followed by the writer's name, or sometimes, like with the case with this script, the Chapter 7 script, it has the title and then it just has by the Duffer Brothers, and then they have directed by the Duffer Brothers. So typically you'll typically see that more with a film than a TV series. But I mean, I've seen it done a multitude of ways. Some I've seen put written by, or they just put by. And then there's contact information on there, which is optional, and that's usually, it'll be in the bottom right hand corner, and it has the contact information of the agent, email, phone number, or company information. The second thing is the scene heading, which we get into the actual script itself. A scene heading is also called a slug line, and this indicates where and when the scene takes place. The format is INT, which stands for interior, or EXT, which stands for exterior, plus location, plus time of day. So to give you an example, this is one I took from the Chapter 7 script. It's exterior, lake bed, night, upside down. So that just, the slug lines really help the cast and the crew, but especially like the crew, like the editing crew, and everyone set, like for the directing, to know, the setting, the time and place. But you don't want to go too overboard with the details. It just, again, just very quickly, you just indicate the location, and then if it's interior, exterior, and then the time of day. And typically you'll only use day, night, dawn, dusk, or continuous as the slug lines, though I have seen some use morning. It just varies. Just depends on the scale and scope of the TV show or the film. And then we have the action, which the action headings, which describes what is happening in the scene and what the audience sees and hears. The action is always written in the present tense, and camera directions and shot directions are usually avoided unless absolutely necessary. So in reading the script for Chapter 7, I've noticed that the Duffers do include camera directions in their action lines. So my guess would be they do this because they're also like directing this episode. And so they just went ahead and included the camera shots and directions, though they're very minimal. I guess like whenever they put it in the script, whenever they like a specific, like it has to be done like this during filming, in the scripts that they write themselves. And so I actually would love to be able to read a Stranger Things script written by another writer on the Stranger Things Writers Room to see if they do the same. But here's an example of action, which again I took from the Chapter 7 script. We pick up right where we left off with the Demobats feeding on Steve. So again, that just tells everyone who's going to read this script what is happening here in this scene. And then an example of a camera direction / shot. Again, I also took this from Chapter 7 script. They put in all caps, clothes on. They're talking about the Demobats. Nasty little razor sharp mouths rip skin from his bare body like supernatural vultures. It's awful. So again, like you have this camera direction. I've also seen them do like we dolly around. So usually, again, with the camera shots, they'll typically put those in all caps. So basically, in a script, also like whatever is important to the scene, or if it's like a noun, you want to put those in caps, all caps as well. Character name, it's always centered and capitalized, and it appears above the character's name. Which are also known as Rileys, Ruylies. They appear in parentheses under the character name, right before the dialogue. They're used sparingly to indicate tone or action that affects delivery. I've spotted this a few times in Chapter 7 script. I've mostly seen this done in audio drama scripts because, again, that's all audio. The audience is not going to be able to see, someone like, pouting or be able to see from like their tones. So it's typically where I've seen parentheses used the most, but I've spotted it used in this chapter 7 script. One example I found was Steve, parentheses, catching breath. I think I lost about a pound of flesh, but other than that, yeah, never better. It's after he gets bitten by the Demobats. So I guess, they put that there, just for, when Joe Keery was reading that, so he'd know, okay, this is how I kind of need to go into this scene. And then dialogue, the lines are spoken by a character, obviously. They are indented and formatted beneath the character name. And then transitions, optional, and usually right aligned. Examples of this are cut to, fade in, fade out, dissolve to. Transitions are typically used only when necessary to guide the editor or emphasize a stylistic moment. Sound and music cues, they are more common in audio drama scripts or shooting scripts, but for film and television, they only use if sound is integral. For audio drama, sound effects and music cues are essential and often formatted clearly for clarity. I've rarely ever seen it in the Duffer Brothers, like the scripts that they've written. I remember I believe it's either in the Montauk script or the Vanishing of Will Byers script, but I believe it is the Montauk script. They do have in there, they list specifically, or they write specifically a song by Queen in there, but I in the Piggyback script, they do write in there like something like intense sci-fi music plays or something like that. But again, it's very, very, very rare because most of that takes place in post. And then subheaders and secondary sluglines are used to indicate a change of location within the same larger scene. Example, later or across the room. Then montages and series of shots. There's special format to indicate multiple short, visually distinct moments. They can be written as a list under one scene heading or introduced with begin montage, end montage. Superimposed text is used to show on-screen text like dates, times, or titles. An example, this comes from the Vanishing of Will Byers script. This is right when the episode opens and it goes superimposed titles, November 6th, 1983, Hawkins, Indiana. And so that's how you basically describe what the titles are going to look like over the image, in the background. And then back to scene is used after a flashback, montage, or dream sequence. I've also seen in some scripts where the writer will simply, they'll just simply put begin flashback, end flashback to indicate a flashback sequence. The same for montages and dream sequences. I noticed in Chapter 7 script, the Duffers would include it either in the slug line or action, so there's no, I guess, particular industry standard or correct way to do this, it seems like. I guess it's just whatever is easier for your cast and crew and yourself to understand. And then some script formatting information. Font, it's always Courier new 12-point font. That's industry standard. Your margins should be 1 inch all around and 1.5 inches left margin for binding. Page count for feature films, it's usually around 90 to 120 pages. But for TV, it's usually 22 pages to 60 pages. And then a page is usually equals to about a minute of screen time. And for those of you out there who maybe would be interested in writing a script and you're worried about all of these things, putting all this formatting together, I would suggest there's going and finding a scripting software Like, I like to use Writer's Duet, but there's also Final Draft and um, Six Go. That one's good. But I'd say, like, especially for beginners, Writer's Duet does the best. And again, it'll put it all in there for you, so you don't have to worry about making sure all the formatting and all that's correct. But yeah, that is basically the entire anatomy of a screenplay.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I feel like if people aren't familiar with it, they now have like a much better idea of what we're talking about. And this reminds me of something. So I had this high school English teacher. I remember this guy, and he would insist that we submit all of our essays, all our assignments in Courier New 12 point and like the margins you're talking about. And he kept insisting this was the standard. And when we got to university, like we were going to have to do this. And it was ridiculous because by that point, it wasn't the default on Word anymore. So we'd have to like make these like special templates to do it. And none of us could figure out what the frick this guy was talking about. You know, classmates of mine had siblings in university and college, and they were like, this is not the standard. I don't know what the heck that guy's talking about. And somebody finally figured it out, like several months into grade 12. They finally figured it out. They determined that it's the standard for scripts. And so the conclusion we all came to was that it's continued to be the standard for scripts, but at some point it was the standard for other types of writing too, essays, other formats, which is all based off, you know, a typewriter. And then that became digitized. And all we can figure is that it was the standard for all assignments for any type of written work when he was in university. And that it obviously changed in the years since. Like these days, every time Word goes to a new update, there's a new standard. But clearly he was like not interested in learning what the new one was. And so he just kept repeating this. And it was always frustrating. But once we understood that, we're like, oh, the guy's just stuck in the past. Like, cool. Nothing he teaches us is useful. But okay, at least we understand why he's doing it. But it was so annoying because we'd especially format like our Word documents and everything. And today, obviously, like you said, there's software to help you and everything. And Word has a lot more features than it used to. But back then it was kind of limited. And yeah, it was like really annoying.
Yeah, I mean, I was like late middle school throughout high school. It was all MLA. You had to do MLA standard. And then when I got to college, they did not accept MLA. It was Chicago standard. And so I had to, that was rough, especially that first year having to learn Chicago standard format, because it's completely different from MLA. So I totally understand.
Yeah, and I don't know if this has gotten any better, but I remember there being like a huge disconnect when I was in high school where they kept insisting that we were going to need all this stuff. And then I got to university and we were like, what the heck? We don't use any of it. Like the only thing they taught me that I used was, I think in my last couple of years, they taught us how to do an annotated bibliography when in my first couple of years of university, we had to use those for like assignments. That was literally the only useful thing I realized I've been taught, because everything else was like so out of date, it was no longer used. And we were taught to do various different styles of annotation. So like that was helpful because I remember each teacher would have like their own thing they wanted. So like that was good. But the way they taught us to write an essay, that was considered total crap when you got to university. You do that and we're failing you. Even the history they taught us, like the last year they started doing revisionist history, but prior to that I was like, oh, like none of this is relevant anymore, or this isn't the way it should be taught, or we were missing chunks of information, or just like, oh, this isn't relevant. So yeah, I remember that feeling. I don't know if it's more aligned now. I hope it is, but yeah, I definitely remember that feeling. Okay, so we're going to begin with Appendix 1. And so we pick up back at the Wheeler house. This is the additional dialogue and instructions for the scene where Lucas, Dustin, and Max are sitting on the couch, and they've gotten, all back from the lake, and they've been found out, and Erica's, glaring at them from the corner, and they're asking where Nancy is, and they're being quote interrogated by the police and their parents, who are doing a terrible job of it. So that is where we pick up. The top line is interior Wheeler house, living room, night. And we pick up with Erica, whose dialogue here is listed as, "The fire is consuming us now. It's consuming us. Ted, threaten them with a little jail time. See if that loosens their lips."
I always appreciated that a moment of comedic relief here, and so being able to read what all the dialogue is, because you can, whenever you watch this scene, you can hear what's going on in the background, but it's not the focus, so you don't have much time to really think about what it is that they're saying, or to be able to pick up on it all. And so it's really fun to read. I just love their sibling dynamic and their sibling relationship, and reading it, this appendix really makes me appreciate them even more.
Yeah, I love their dynamic too, and I think Caleb and Priya do such a great job with that. And you can, particularly in the couch scene, I really love the dynamic there. You can really tell. I remember watching it for the first time, and I was like, oh, you can just Caleb, Gaten, and Sadie, all kind of grew up as Broadway babies. They, did Broadway together before they were ever cast. And so you could just really feel that camaraderie and that closeness of being friends with somebody for that long. It just came through, and I thought it was such a great use of their talents. And I feel like going into the season, that must have been something they planned for, was let's give them a scene all together where they can show that off. And then you have Erica being like, the couch is literally on fire. The dynamic where Justin and Lucas are trying to get Erica to shut the heck up, and that kind of speaking through your teeth, those silent eye conversations when the adults aren't looking, is so much a part of the way siblings interact, the way friends interact, and just it's so much a part, especially when you're young, of the way those kind of nonverbal conversations you have with people is so much a part of that. And I just love that scene, and I love their dynamic, and they have really good chemistry together, and it's very fun. And you can tell, particularly in this scene, the sequence that comes after, where Caleb slides his handle on the counter, as he's making his point, stuff like that, where it's clearly not in the script, but they kind of play around with it, and there's a physicality to it too. So it's cool to get more detail on what the actual lines were. And the first thing I noticed is that Erica's lines are slightly different and a lot funnier in the final version. So I'm guessing that Priya Ferguson did some improv here. My guess would be that they ran through it the way it was scripted, and then did some alternates, because I feel like her final version is a lot more spunky. It's really funny. The starting line was good, but I feel like they improved upon it. And what's interesting is that Lucas has a line here that was cut in the final version, where there's two competing sets of dialogue in the original, where there's Sue, Ted, Karen, and Claudia, who are yelling at each other because Ted says that dumb line about threatening them with jail time, and all the other parents seriously, Ted? And then Karen's trying to diffuse the situation. In the appendix, it's listed that their dad, Charles, asks Lucas if his sister's right and is she lying, and then Lucas says, "Dad, no, she just wants me in trouble, like always. She's full of shit." And Eric goes, "Full of shit? Really? You take that back right now." Lucas is take it back. Erica's you take it back. And they're back and forth. And so these things are supposed to be competing. I'm guessing that they went with one over the other, because I feel like they actually had them doing this. You wouldn't have actually been able to hear other party. It would have just been a cacophony of people yelling on screen. And so I feel like maybe they tried this and they're oh yeah, you can't hear anybody. We gotta pick one. So they picked the one with the adults, because we'd already had banter with the kids already. Also, I feel like Lucas using the word shit in front of his parents and a bunch of other adults doesn't really make any sense. He's a pretty respectful kid, and his parents seem pretty no nonsense. And I mean, you're not going to swear in front of your parents, especially when you're already in trouble. That doesn't really fit. So I feel like when they went to film this, maybe Caleb said something, or, they just realized you couldn't hear both conversations, so they just picked the one with the adults. But it's really interesting to see, how it goes from this is what we scripted, but then, how much changes when they go to film the day of. Just so much comes out when you're physically doing it that isn't always obvious when you script something.
Yeah, that is interesting. I hadn't noticed that before.
Right, so that is the end of appendix number 1. We then pick up with appendix number 2. in parentheses, it says parents talking to Daniels. So that is, as we learn, Officer Daniels. Something I didn't realize till I rewatched this scene for this episode is that there's actually 2 other officers with Callahan and Powell at the Wheeler house. But they're so far into the background that the lighting in the forefront is the parents and Erica and the deputies. And so I didn't realize there were other officers even there. Like, you're not really supposed to focus on them. So yeah, there's an officer named Officer Daniels that's standing behind them, as well as another officer, which I realized on rewatch was kind of excessive, because like, we have 4 police officers for 3 kids that were found by a lake, and parents are asking, do we need to like hire lawyers? And, Officer Daniel replies that we're not at that stage yet. And, as far as we know, they did nothing wrong. So it seems a bit excessive. And I feel like there's kind of some mixed messaging in this scene where they're trying to get the kids to take it seriously. Meanwhile, they're telling the parents like, oh, you don't need to hire a lawyer. Like, it's not that serious. They didn't do anything wrong. And she's like, well, no wonder the kids aren't talking to you. Like, you're telling them it's super serious, but then you're telling their parents, don't worry about it. And also the fact that like Officer Daniel says, there's no evidence of a crime being committed. It seems excessive for them to have that many officers when there's no evidence of a crime.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you bring up how many officers there are in the Wheeler living room, and it's like not one of them knows what they're doing except for maybe Officer Daniels. Which I actually like Officer Daniels. I feel like he was the most level-headed one. This appendix here only made me further question, why isn't Officer Daniels more involved in the investigation into the murders? Because he actually seems to have a clue.
He has a clue, unlike Callahan and Powell. Like, I feel like the job kind of went the way it did just because they were Hopper's deputies, rather than who would be the best fit. Because like, oh my god, like Callahan and Powell like don't have a goddamn clue, man. Like, they have no clue what the heck they're doing, and that is so freaking obvious. They keep wondering why no one's taking them seriously, and it's like, because you're a joke. And like, it is immediately obvious they haven't listened to a damn thing Hopper told them. He was big on protocol. Hopper had his issues, but he knew what he was doing. And right off the bat, when they get to the Munson trailer, they immediately break protocol. They do it over the phone instead of over the walkie. They tip Jason off to the fact that Chrissy was buying drugs from Eddie. Like, they break all kinds of protocols. They let Jason take over the town hall meeting. And I feel like you could really feel Hopper's absence, because, what you could really feel in those scenes is Hopper would never let this happen. Like, that would last about 30, like, he'd never make those mistakes. And the minute Jason got up, he'd be like, sit the hell down. And if he didn't sit the hell down, he'd be like, to the deputies, be like, arrest him right now, get him out of here. Like, all of his goons, arrest, go. Like, no one does that. We're just done here. And the fact that he, even in his not best state, commanded more respect than these guys do is just like, oh man.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Powell is trying his best, but I feel like he's just a little bit in over his head. I mean, I don't think that he was expecting to have all this happen in like his first year on the job. But Callahan definitely is an idiot. But he's fun to watch. Like, he's funny, but yeah, he's definitely an idiot, and he has been since season 1. So there you go.
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely feels like Callahan's always kind of been a bit of an idiot. But I feel like Powell is trying his best, but at the same time, like, he seems overwhelmed. But like you said, he didn't expect this to happen. But I mean, the guy clearly wasn't paying attention. Kids have been getting murdered and disappearing in this town for like 4 years at that point. And I feel like maybe the 2 of them didn't really appreciate how much Hopper was doing, or maybe they weren't really aware of it. I don't know. But he's basically the only person keeping that stuff at bay and like handling stuff. Like, kids are still dying, bad things are still happening, but he's doing his best to keep a handle on things. And with him gone, I don't think they really appreciated how much the guy was doing. And for all their comments about Joyce being kind of loony and all these kids being troublemakers, behind the scenes, they're the only ones doing something about this stuff. So the minute that Joyce and Hopper were out of the picture and half the Hawkins crew is elsewhere, things get out of hand like really quickly because they're not there to save the day. And also, if you're not prepared to deal with that, maybe don't take the job. Because I could have found somebody else, like, from another town or something. I could have filled it, like, externally. Like, if you're not prepared to deal with murder and mayhem, I don't think, like, there was a time, like, when nothing bad happened in Hawkins, but that time has passed, man. Like, by the time we get there, it's been, like, this has been happening for 4 years. And even that, we know bad things were happening in the lab, the town just wasn't aware of it. So, I don't know, man. It's like he signed up for a job and then was shocked when bad things happened after bad things have been happening for 3 years. It's kind of like, well, you signed up for it. The other thing I want to talk about is how, because the focus is so much on the forefront parents and teens in these scenes, I realized there's a lot of stuff that like happens so quickly in the background I didn't really catch. So for example, we find out from the appendix that the parents are talking to Officer Daniels as Dustin leaves the bathroom. I originally thought they were talking to Chief Powell in that scene because we only glimpse that person from behind and they do have a similar look. So it wasn't until I was reading the appendix I was like, oh yeah, that is a different person. And then I noticed the officer standing behind them, the couch scene. And the second officer, not Daniels, but the other one that's unnamed, is the one who Karen gets a drink for during the scene that like Dustin, Lucas, and Erica are talking, where she's like, are you sure you just don't want water? I've got all this other stuff. And he takes a Coke and then they walk out of the room. There's actually a lot more going on in these scenes than there appears at first glance because of the way things are framed, and like that's intentional. You're supposed to focus on the parents and teens in the forefront, not what's going on behind them. And then we go to appendix number 3. So this is the dialogue for when the boys are rewinding and explaining things to Erica. So you have the full dialogue because this is the part where the camera moves from where they're talking in the kitchen to the front door of the Wheeler house, and then we transition into the upside down. So they had them presumably film the full dialogue, and then we only use parts of it as they make that transition. So I think this is worth reading in full because we get a lot of other information here. So the appendix lists the dialogue as such. It says, the boys rewind for Erica, the hallway, continuous. Our frustrated boys turn to Erica and begin to, quote, rewind. Dustin sighs. Okay, so you remember the gate under the lab? Erica, sarcastic. Oh no, I blocked that out. Dustin, okay, but you seem to think it was made by the commies, which it wasn't. Erica, there was a giant gun made by commies firing blue energy into the gate, opening it. Dustin, yes and no. That was the gate 11 opened, the mother gate. 11 reclosed it 2 years ago around Halloween, and though she succeeded, the barrier between our worlds remained thin, which allowed the commies to pry it back open with their tech. Erica, I still don't get what it has to do with Lover's Lake. Dustin, yeah, I'm getting there. The government was teaching 11 remote viewing, which is basically psychic spying, right? We push past them toward the front door. End of appendix number 3. So what I think is interesting is if you watch the final scene, we only get snippets of this conversation. As the camera pans over to the front door, the noise of the pulsing lights signifying, something with the upside down drowns out some of their words. So we only get parts of it. And so we only hear the parts about the gate, the Russians, and the laser. And the part about the laser is a bit different. Erica says there was a giant laser. So they obviously changed that dialogue, presumably when they shot this. I'm guessing so that the sound bites that we did get made more sense and were a bit more impactful. So they kept the first part about the gate and her being sarcastic, but like, no, I blocked that out. And then they just added a part that was a bit more simple about the laser rather than going to a lot of detail. Presumably because it was easier to mesh with the sound of the pulsing lights and the transition. And also, I really love that transition. It's one of my favorites. Something I love about season 4 is the transitions are like really cool and interesting. They clearly put a lot of thought into the transitions for this season. So that's something that's really cool to kind of see how they map that out from the beginning and what they were going for there.
Yeah, and what I really like from appendix 3, which is continued through the succeeding appendices, but what Dustin explains here about when he's beginning to explain to Erica about, the commies aren't behind this time. I mean, because at this point, like, they don't know yet that Vecna has been behind it, but they're starting to put the pieces together. But I like the explanation though, like the way Dustin begins it by saying, no, it's not the commies. Yes, the commies were just trying to open the gate, but really it's because, like, 11 first, she initially opened Mother Gate, and because of that, the barrier between worlds has been weakened, even though she closed it. It's still left. It's still weak. The veil between both worlds is still very weak, and that's kind of how the commies were able to have at least some success with having it open just enough for the Mind Flayer in season 3. And so I just love the way he kind of breaks it down for her here in the script. And I know we didn't necessarily hear him say that on screen, but I did love reading about it in the script, the way the Duffer Brothers here are explaining it. And so I feel like this appendix maybe like sets the tone for that.
Yeah, for sure. And something else I find interesting is that the paragraph Dustin has where he's like yes and no. I feel like a lot of that language there's a lot more formal than I feel like Dustin would actually say it. I get that he's a bit of a know-it-all, but the way he describes it, he's like, around Halloween, and though she succeeded, I'm like, okay, I get he's a know-it-all, but he's still a teenager. So I feel like they probably simplified some of this because I feel like when they went to film it, it sounded a bit too adult in some cases. It's not how a teenager talks, and they also needed like better sound bites for the transition. Also, something I found interesting is that at the end of his explanation, Erica's like, what does this have to do with Lover's Lake? And he's like, I'm getting to that. The government was teaching 11 remote viewing, which is basically psychic spying, right? So presumably what he was going to say after that was about how Vecna is able, like who Vecna is, what Vecna is, how he's able to remote spy on people, like through remote viewing. Because I don't know how else that would be related to what they were saying, because the rest of it's about the gates. Is that your understanding, Ashley? Or
yeah, that was my understanding as well. Like that's what he was leading to, because I think like this scene is supposed to be like after Dustin figures out like what Vecna's trying to do with opening these gates and stuff and how he's doing it, and then he kind of puts 2 and 2 together. But yeah, that was kind of what I felt like he was headed towards. Like them, Vecna and 11 both having the ability for remote viewing, which is also interesting because when you consider like everything else we learned in season 4 up to this point through 11's flashbacks in the Nina tank, is that like Brenner, outside of what we see of that one scene with him in number 10, they don't really seem to be doing a lot of remote viewing as part of their training. It seems to be like more of being able to move things with their minds and being able to, face off in battles against each other. So I found that very interesting. I mean, yeah, he's correct, because we know like from season 1 that Brenner that's what he was doing with 11. I find it very interesting that he says that, considering that he doesn't know where 11 is. He doesn't know that she's seeing all these memories and stuff. So yeah, I found that part of it interesting as well.
yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of parallel journeys in this season. I've seen people comment about how Max and Elle kind of have these parallel journeys with what they're dealing with, and how it's really obvious, especially in the way they make the transitions between scenes, like the one in the high school I really like a lot, that, they really could have used each other this season, but they were separated. And I feel like it's a theme throughout, where you see in a different scene, you see Dustin being frustrated, be like, oh, we need Will, when Max is trying to draw what she saw. This scene too, it's Dustin and Lucas are trying to figure things out, and they're bringing Erica into the loop. But simultaneously, you have like the California gang who are trying to figure things out, and it's just a lot of parallel journeys. And but I think part of what they're trying to illustrate there is if they were all together in one place, they'd be able to figure this out real quick. But because they're all separated, that's part of what's causing them not to get to the conclusion they need to right away. And I feel like they've done that in other seasons where you have the groups that kind of break off into smaller groups or pairings or team ups, when they always come back together at the end. And I feel like what made this season different is that everybody was so spread out, like country, continent, really, really spread out. And I was personally looking forward to see that everybody come back together at the end, and they chose to push that to the beginning of season 5, so we didn't really get to have that. Instead of ending with it, we're starting with it, which I'm looking forward to, because I'm interested to see how everybody's going to be describing what's been going on, especially since we see Vicky standing next to Robin when the ash starts falling, and if she's with her when they show up, they're going to explain that to Vicky, which I think just watching them try to explain this to somebody, if they show us that on screen, is going to be really interesting. I also think it's going to be interesting what they say and what they don't say, because I saw people point out that when Nancy's describing her Vecna trance, she leaves some stuff out. She leaves the stuff out about Barb. She doesn't go into detail of certain parts, at least on screen anyway. And so I'm very curious to see kind of at the beginning of 5, where the characters try to explain to each other like what has occurred and what has happened and what they leave in and what they leave out. So I'm really interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, so am I. I think that's what I'm most intrigued about is seeing how they get everyone together and sharing the information. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how they pull that off.
As am I. We all have high hopes for season 5, for the final conclusion to the story, and how they're going to start things off, but also, wrap things up.
Yes, and it all begins this Saturday at TUDUM. Maybe. Hopefully.
Excellent segue, my friend. It's almost like we've been doing this a while.
I know.
Alrighty, well, those are all of my thoughts. Anything else you can think of?
That's all I have for now for these appendices. I definitely have a lot more for the next crop of them.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
And that's our show. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe and tell your friends. Our theme music is provided by Neon Knights. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. Please join us next time, same dial, same time.
Over and out.